Hello again, this is Dr. Michael Bogart welcoming you back to our video series Exploring World Religions. In session 14, we're looking at Roman Catholicism and Eastern Orthodoxy. In clip 1, we gave an overview of the common historical background of both groups. In clip 2, I gave a brief overview of Roman Catholicism. In this final clip of session 14, we'll take a bird's eye view of Eastern Orthodoxy. Okay, let's look more closely at Eastern Orthodoxy. Right off the bat, I need to emphasize that there is a Jewish group called Orthodox Judaism. This is not the same thing as Eastern Orthodox Christianity. The term Orthodox just means conforming to traditionally accepted doctrines and practices. So Orthodox Jews conform to the ancient practices of Judaism, and Eastern Orthodox Christians conform to the age-long traditions of Eastern Christians. It's also important to be clear that there is no single Eastern Orthodox church. There are several churches within the larger Orthodox branch, such as the Greek Orthodox, Syrian Orthodox, and Russian Orthodox churches, each with their own leader called a Patriarch. But there's no single pope figure except that the Patriarch of Constantinople is seen as the first among equals and acts sort of as the chairman of the board for the entire group. Overall, the Eastern Orthodox churches have a membership of 220 million. Orthodoxy has a long and distinguished history, but unlike Roman Catholicism, which had only periodic bouts with Islam, Eastern Orthodoxy experienced a long struggle with Islam since the rise of Islamic power in the 7th and 8th centuries. The eastern part of the Roman Empire, known to history as the Byzantine Empire, finally fell to Islam and the Turks in 1453. Since then, leadership has moved from Constantinople towards Russia. And by the way, many of the peoples of Eastern Europe were converted to Orthodoxy rather than to Catholicism. The Russians were converted as a whole in 989. The story goes that Tsar Vladimir had considered converting from paganism to some other religion, and he had invited representatives of Islam, Judaism, Catholicism, and Orthodoxy to make their case before him. He felt that the Muslim requirement of circumcision and abstinence from alcohol was just too much to ask. He thought Islam overall was a joyous religion, so he rejected that option. He rejected Judaism also because of circumcision and felt that their loss of Jerusalem and their homeland was a sign that God was not with them. He sent envoys to Europe to look at Catholicism, and they reported on the austere masses and monasteries. Well, that didn't sound very appealing either. But the ambassadors that he sent to Constantinople, at that time still the glory of the Byzantine world, were enraptured by what they saw in the liturgy and magnificence of the services at the Hagia Sophia Church. They brought the report, "We no longer knew whether we were in heaven or on earth, such beauty that we knew not how to tell of it." That was what Vladimir had been looking for. So it was orthodoxy for the Russians. Orthodox Christianity acknowledges only two sources of authority, the Bible and the first 7 ecumenical church councils held before the Great East-West Schism of 1054. They share much of the same history with Catholicism, at least for the first 1,000 years of the Christian faith. They have essentially the same 7 sacraments as Roman Catholicism, although they call them not sacraments but mysteria. These are baptism, chrismation, which is a lot like confirmation, penance, communion, which is like the Catholic Eucharist or Mass, marriage, holy orders, prayers for the sick. The liturgy is quite a bit like the Catholic Mass and is presided over by a priest. One difference here, in Orthodoxy, priests can be married, but only if they enter the priesthood as married men. So much for what Catholicism and Orthodoxy have in common. Here are some major differences. Eastern Orthodoxy is autocephalous. That means that each ethnic grouping, Greeks, Russians, Syrians, and others, has its own patriarch and structure. The ethnic churches never had a single language for the liturgy like the Roman Catholic Church did with Latin. They always have celebrated the liturgy in whatever language the local people speak. Although separated into ethnic churches, they acknowledge their common, though loose, relationship with one another. Another difference makes Eastern Orthodoxy distinct not only from Catholicism, but also from all Western Christians, which includes both Catholics and Protestants. The central focus of Orthodoxy is on Christ's incarnation rather than his atonement. Let me explain. If you ask a knowledgeable Western Christian, Catholic or Protestant, what was the main thing that Jesus did when he came to earth, you will get a single answer. Jesus came to die for our sins. Ask an Orthodox Christian the same question and you might get a different answer. The main thing that Jesus did, according to them, was to become human, the incarnation, God becoming one of us. Now, it's not that either side denies the truth of the other. They both believe that Jesus was and is God incarnated in humanity, just as they both believe that Jesus died on the cross to atone for human sins. It's just a matter of emphasis. Which was the central thing that Jesus accomplished, the most important thing? Eastern Christians see the central miracle as God loving us enough to stoop to become human for us. Western Christians see the central miracle as God loving us so much that he would die for us. Now, Catholicism has a mystical element, but overall, Eastern Orthodoxy tends to be the more mystical of the two. Orthodox monks often opt for a hermit-style life rather than living in community as Catholic monks do. And of course, there are other differences. For at least some of the service, the worshipers are separated from the priest by a partition called an Iconostasis. Orthodox Christians do not use statues in worship as Catholics do because they feel that veneration of statues is just too close to idol worship. And for at least some of the services, worshipers stand in Eastern churches rather than sit as Western Christians do. Okay, so much for clip 3 and video session 14 within the Exploring World Religions series. I hope this gave you a clearer understanding of Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox Christianity. In session 15, we'll look at a third major grouping of historic Christianity, and that's Protestantism. Unlike Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox Christianity, this is not a single organization, but still an evolving patchwork of groups that began to split off from the Roman Catholic Church in the 1500s. I think it will answer at least some of the questions you may have about what can be confusing in this array of church groups. Until then, this is Dr. Michael Bogart, and we will see you then.